We're going to talk about navigating loss, man, because obviously everybody has experienced a loss, whether that's in a relationship, whether that's a job, whether that's a friendship or whatever. But how do you navigate it? And I think we've gone through a couple of things and experiences in our lives that we like to pass along some of our, or maybe our tips and help some people out there.
Yeah, but just to talk about it, what I've learned is, during times of loss, if you have the courage to speak about it, speak
Yeah.
about how you feel.
Mhm.
So many times we say I'm good.
Yeah.
So many times we say I'm good. Man, you all right? Everything's good. I'm good, man. I'm just dealing with something. I'm good. In reality, most people aren't good.
Hmm.
And so as you try to navigate loss, the thing with losing something, whether it be a relationship, like you said, a job, or people you love, life keeps going. The world continues to go.
Yeah.
So although you may be going through something, still got to go to work.
Yeah.
Still got to take care of the kids in some situations. You still have to be attentive to your partner. And so how do you navigate all of these things while you're dealing with loss? And
Well, how do you navigate it? How do you go through it? How do you get through when you find yourself in a position where you've lost something that you thought at that time was important to you or was important to you?
so this year has been particularly difficult for me
Mhm.
when it comes to loss. Late last year, my surrogate mother, Valerie Taylor, passed away. My brother, Deion Taylor, grew up with him, lived with him. She took me into her house. She passed away, and it was devastating.
Yeah.
And, we really relied on each other, right? And we would just spend hours, Deion and myself would just spend hours, talking and laughing about the good times,
Mhm.
right? Like the one thing Valerie would do, she would cuss your ass out in a minute,
Right. Yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
she just bust into the house, and just let loose on you.
mhm.
As growing teenage boys, one thing we were always afraid of was her. And that kept us on the straight and narrow. Like we couldn't come home smelling like a cigarette. We couldn't come home drunk, not doing our homework. Like that was off the table.
Ain't nothing more powerful than a black woman.
And-
You and Dion are big boys. Too.
Yeah, man, please. But what that did was it kept us focused.
Right.
And so losing her was difficult for both of us. It was a lot of crying and all that, but us expressing what she meant to us.
Yeah.
She not only parented us, but she opened her house to anybody that needed a place or stability. She was there, and she was an angel. And it was difficult, man. But having him and others to share those moments with, it made it tolerable.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't ease the pain all the way, but it made it almost comforting to share that level of compassion and honesty with other people.
When you remember the legacy of somebody
Mm-hmm.
and the lessons that they left behind, it keeps them alive, so to speak, because they continue to live throughout you and throughout your brother.
Yeah.
Because you can continue to instill that in other people. You pass along the lessons that you learn from her along the way to your children. And to
Absolutely.
others. So then,
without the cussing, we don't do the. I try
sometimes
not to.
you got to cuss them up.
Well, when they get a little bit older, when they get they're 13 and my 13-year-old I almost be cussing at him. He crazy. But my 10-year-old, he's emotional and he's good. But how
kids can't handle the
no.
Yeah, boy.
No, they shouldn't be able to.
They shouldn't, and that's why thankfully they got therapy early because we ain't had no therapy.
We did not have therapy. Our parents didn't have therapy.
Yep, and so and speaking of that, because I believe that's a huge part of dealing with loss too, is because like growing up, you as I, growing up, we were taught that first of all, don't cry. You got to suppress this pain. You got to be a man. You got to man up. There was no therapy. There was no way to overcome that grief. You had to cry alone. You can by yourself or whatever. Even at a funeral, man, you're wearing the glasses so people don't see your tears.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that was always difficult. So it's good that today's society, when they deal with grief, they're allowed to express themselves. I have a good friend of mine who just lost her daughter.
Oh, wow.
And she couldn't cry for a while. I'm like, girl, I said, no one should tell you how to grieve. She was going out. She was like a week later, she was hanging out with her friends, and people were like, how could you be hanging out? Like, I'm telling her, I'm like, you grieve the way you feel like grieving.
Period.
Don't worry about what other people have to say about how you express yourself. But you're going to have moments, and maybe for the rest of your life, where 40 years from now, there's going to be a moment that's going to remind you of your daughter. There's going to be a smell that reminds you of your daughter, and you're just going to bust out crying, and that's okay. And people need to realize that.
Yeah, when you're dealing with things, especially the loss of loved ones, and like I said, this has been a particularly tough year. So Mama Valerie passed away late last year. My father, passed away in June.
Oh, wow.
Pancreatic cancer. Got diagnosed in February, passed away in June. So that was 2 parenting figures that I lost. And I was like, man, this is like, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Right? It's a lot. You start to ask yourself, like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And I'm 48 years old, so you got to realize, like, time is time. You can never stop it. You can never get it back.
Right.
And my father was 82. Valerie was in her 70s. And just to show you how life continues to go and how life keeps lifing, 2 days ago, John Hellman Sr., another parental figure in my life, passed away.
Wow.
I get a call last week on a text Tuesday. My good friend John Hellman, the only reason I'm playing football is because John played football. And I lived with John my 8th grade year and half of my 9th grade year before I moved in with Dion. And his father was a single father who adopted him, and he welcomed me into his home. And he made every single football game, like everything. Like he was there for us. And to get that text, hey, my dad's not doing well, I immediately got on a plane, went up to Sacramento, sat with him in the hospital, and he called me 2 days ago and said, hey, man, Dad passed away. I just wanted you to know that he loved you. He was proud of you. And so that's 3 of my parental figures who are now gone. And it was like a truck hit me.
Yeah. And that's a lot in a small amount of time.
It felt like, I'm like, okay,
what's next?
What's next?
Right.
Right. You can't, as a human, you can only ask that question because it just keeps coming. I immediately picked up the phone and called my mother and said, hey, I don't know what's going on, but you better hold on to that rope.
Yeah.
You the last one like that.
But once again, on that point, it makes you appreciate the people who are here a little bit more. You start to cling to them. You start to realize that, hey, like, you can't take it for granted. You have to appreciate your life. You got to do things in your life that you want to do and realize that tomorrow's not promised for anybody. That's why you got to love up on your neighbors, your friends, your loved ones as much as you can while you can, man. Like, and I'm sympathetic and I'm empathetic for everything that you've gone through, man. I've told you, bro, like the last 2.5 years of my life, man, have been the tougher years of my life. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I just turned 54 years old, and the things I've gone through, man, like I thank God. I know it's only by God's grace that I'm still here, because had I not experienced a lot of things in my life earlier in my life, when we're talking about helping you through things, the things I've gone through over the last 2.5 years would have killed me. It would have killed me. but because of what I've experienced in the past, sort of prepared me in a sense, or gave me a different skin or a different muscle to help me through it. But I've never experienced everything all at the same time. I've been divorced before, right? But in the last 2.5 years, I had another divorce. I've lost loved ones, but in the last 2.5 years, I've lost 4 people that were close to me to death. I've lost friends before, but recently I've lost a lot of people who were close to me, and all at the same encompassing time, man. And what I've learned from that is, like, God doesn't give you more than you can handle. But sometimes you wonder if God knows how much you can handle, man, because it's, and you're wondering when it's going to end, man. But we are both huge when it comes to therapy and mental health, and now being able to express ourselves and being able to let it go and being able to let the tears flow, because before I would suppress it.
Well, yeah, like you talked about your upbringing, right? Little boys are always taught to suck it up. You don't be crying, don't do that, and don't do this. And so you grow up with that hardened sense of emotion. You don't know how to tap in to that side of your emotions, which makes you an imbalanced person, because there is no all vibrato or toughness without sadness, emotion, and fear. And if you don't tap into that, you won't be able to deal with loss in a productive way.
Right.
And it's funny to try to say deal with loss productively, but there are unproductive ways you can go about loss, dealing with loss, right? Inflicting pain on yourself or others, and drug use, alcoholism, all of these things to numb the pain instead of living in the pain and dealing with the pain. Like, I don't drink or smoke, never have. So the reality of the situation is I've never been able, through anything that I've gone through in my life, I've never been able to go home and take the edge off.
Right.
I've never been able to go
So
sit.
what was your outlet then? How did you deal with that trauma? Because I'm going to get to the reason why I did a lot of things, but how did you deal with that trauma? Because if you don't have that outlet, it's sitting there somewhere, and it's going to come out as toxic masculinity. It's going to come out as some kind of vice that you need to release that.
I would internalize it, right? I would run off and I would escape to the movies. So I would go sit in a movie theater by myself and just leave the world behind. That's why film to me is so important. That's why I got into film production. That's why I got into television and into entertainment, because I know the power of letting go and getting sucked up into something.
Escapism.
Right? Like, I know the power of that. So creating those mediums for someone else to be able to sit in and deal, or just find some peace while they're dealing with things, to me was very important.